What if the scientific method we hold so dear, the careful observation, the insistence on nature without divine interference, did not begin with Galileo? What if its roots stretch far deeper, into the mists of antiquity, to a name barely remembered, Strato of Lampsacus? He lived more than 2,300 years ago, and yet, the ripples of his thought echo through every experiment and every equation we write today. This is the story of the man who dared to ask, what if the universe is governed not by gods, but by matter, motion, and the void? Born in Lampsacus, a city nestled on the edge of the Hellespont, Strato grew up at the crossroads of thought. His homeland, now part of modern Turkey, was a melting pot of Ionian philosophy and Athenian influence. It was a time when natural explanations of the world were budding but still tethered to divine narratives. Strato was drawn, like a moth to flame, to the intellectual fires of Athens. There, in the famed Lyceum, founded by Aristotle, the young man began a journey that would alter the trajectory of scientific thinking. Under Theophrastus, Aristotle's successor, Strato absorbed an enormous legacy of biological and physical inquiry. But he also began to question, not just what they studied, but how. When Theophrastus died, Strato assumed the mantle of leadership. As the third head of the Lyceum, his tenure marked a subtle revolution. Gone were the days when philosophy revolved around ethics or divine forms. Under Strato, the school turned toward nature itself, its laws, its matter, its mysterious forces. While Aristotle believed that the universe had purpose and design, that everything moved toward a final cause, Strato was less interested in purpose and more in process. He looked around and saw a world not orchestrated by divine will, but by physical forces, hidden dynamics, and emergent complexity. Imagine a fountain. Water jets into the air and falls back to the earth. To Aristotle, the water should fall at a constant rate, its descent steady and even. But Strato observed something more subtle. He watched how the stream broke apart as it fell, forming droplets and spacing out the lower it dropped. From this simple observation, he made a profound leap. The falling water accelerates. It was the earliest known recognition of acceleration due to gravity, a concept that would wait nearly 2,000 years for Galileo to prove with inclined planes in Pisa. Strato didn't stop there. He proposed that motion could change over time, that forces could act invisibly, and that the properties of bodies were key to understanding movement. He moved away from Aristotle's belief in natural motion and sought mechanistic explanations, a bold move toward what we now call classical physics. To Aristotle, a vacuum, a space where nothing exists, was impossible. Nature, he said, abhors a vacuum. Strato disagreed. Drawing upon Democritus and Leucippus, the early atomists, Strato embraced the concept of empty space. He imagined a world where atoms moved through voids, interacting mechanically. He did not accept atoms as indivisible particles, but he leaned into the idea that space was not continuous, and that empty zones could exist between bodies. This idea, once heretical, laid the groundwork for modern physics and chemistry, especially the understanding of matter, pressure, air, and gas. Centuries later, when scientists began experimenting with vacuum pumps, they were unknowingly validating the worldview of Strato. To Strato, even the human mind was a part of nature. He rejected dualism, the idea that mind and body were separate substances. Instead, he believed that thought, sensation, even consciousness, were all products of material processes. This made him, in many ways, the earliest proto-materialist. Long before neuroscience, he was suggesting that the soul might be no more than the function of the brain, an idea that would emerge again with Hobbes, la métrie, and eventually, modern science. While Strato's mind stretched toward the cosmos, the world around him was changing. A boy named Alexander had risen from Macedon, conquered Persia, and dreamed of a city unlike any the world had seen. In 331 BC, on the edge of Egypt, Alexander the Great founded Alexandria, a port city where East met West, where Greek intellect fused with Egyptian depth. But Alexandria wasn't merely a city, it was a vision. With the construction of the Library of Alexandria, a vast repository of human knowledge, and the Mouse-Sion, an institute of learning unlike any before it. This city became the intellectual capital of the ancient world. The Library of Alexandria would eventually house over 400,000 scrolls, a memory of civilization itself. Philosophers, poets, engineers, mathematicians, and astronomers flocked there. Knowledge was no longer passed orally or scattered across cities. It was concentrated, studied, copied, preserved. Strato spent years in Alexandria. He was summoned by Ptolemy I or his son Ptolemy II Philadelphus as a tutor and scholar, participating in the flourishing of Hellenistic science. There, he found kindred spirits, Herophilus, who dissected the human brain, Eratosthenes, who measured the Earth's circumference, and Aristarchus, who envisioned a heliocentric cosmos. It's no exaggeration to say that Alexandria was the seedbed of modern science, and Strato was among its first gardeners. Strato wrote prolifically, over 30 treatises by some counts, but none survive in full. What we know comes through fragments, quotes, and references in later authors like Cicero, Simplicius, and Plutarch. Why did history forget him? Partly it was the fall of the Lyceum, eclipsed by Stoicism and Epicureanism. Later, the rise of Christianity cast suspicion on materialistic and secular philosophies. And finally, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, in waves over centuries, erased whole shelves of human memory. Yet Strato's ideas lived on. They whispered through the Islamic Golden Age, where scholars like Averroes and Avicenna kept Aristotle, and some of Strato, alive. They resurfaced in the Renaissance, when thinkers like Pierre Bell and Giordano Bruno sought a more natural, less theological universe. Even Spinoza, centuries later, would be dubbed a modern Stratonist, for his belief in a God inseparable from nature. And Galileo, whose falling bodies proved Strato right, built his new physics on that same insistence: observe, measure, question. Today, when we drop a ball and know it accelerates, or when we discuss consciousness in terms of brain activity, or when we theorize quantum vacuums and field energy, we are, knowingly or not, living in the world Strato first glimpsed. He was not a poet of the heavens like Plato, nor a divine architect like Aristotle. He was something different. A naturalist. A skeptic. A scientist long before the word existed. In every age, there are those who light candles in the darkness, whose ideas flicker and vanish, but whose glow never fully dies. Strato of Lampsacus lit one such flame, a quiet, steady light in the long night between the ancient world and our own. And as long as we ask not what is the purpose, but what are the forces, his voice speaks still, beneath the stars. Let us look to nature, and ask her how the world truly works.